Hello, everybody. Hello, Jamaicans.com. How are you all doing? It's been a really long time since I've seen y'all faces. Did you miss me? I missed all of you all. What have you been doing? How have you guys been doing? We have a beautiful, lovely, amazing show lined up for you today. I promised that we were going to come and talk about diabetes and Diabetes Awareness Month. And I have a really special guest all the way from Birmingham, England, Mr. Tony Kelly. He is actually a follower of Jamaicans.com. He's always on the show when I do my shows. And so I'm just excited that he's here. He's going to talk to you all this evening. He's going to give you guys some great tips. He's going to get into the community aspect of diabetes. And so I'm really happy that you guys came in. For those of you who are here, I want to hear from you all. I want to see comments. I want you guys to let me know where you guys are hailing from. For all the folks in England who are up, Mr. Tony Kelly is 5 hours ahead of us. But listen, the man wait up and stay up so he can talk to you. So make sure you guys hang in there. I don't want nobody going to their bed. I don't want nobody going nowhere. Stay tight. Hang with us today. And let us know where you guys are all tuning in from. All right. So, hi, Camille. So, Camille is coming to us from Texas. Welcome, Miss Camille Akbar. Nice to see you on again. I've seen you on here before, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Guys, listen up. Let me tell you what it is, right? So, November is Diabetes Awareness Month. And so that's why we want to have this conversation, because diabetes, for a lot of us, we have a history of diabetes in our family. And Mr. Tony Kelly, who's here to talk, he actually have very similar background in terms of his history in diabetes. So he's going to talk to you about his lived experience, because he's someone who's been managing diabetes. So he's going to share with you guys a little bit about that. But I want you guys to tell me where you are watching from, so that Mr. Kelly can know where you're watching from. I can know where you guys are watching from. The format of our show today, I'm going to speak very briefly about, who he is. I'll read his bio, and then I'm going to introduce him. He'll come on. He'll be sharing with you all his presentation today. And I want you guys to really, again, hang with us here. All right. So let's take a look at a little bit more comments before I get into his. I'm giving folks a chance to come in because I don't want anybody to miss this. All right. So Teresa is hailing up from Miami, Florida. Remember, guys, for those of your friends who are not on Facebook, let them know we're also on YouTube. All right. So Teresa is from Florida. We've got Vaughn, who's on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Vaughn, for coming in from St. Kitts. I love it. Blessings from Annette. I'm back. Yes. Hi, Annette. I remember you from Jamaica. Really good to have you guys all here. All right. So, listen, guys, without further ado, I don't want to spend too much time on here. I do want to read your comments. So please continue to put them in. Put your questions in for Mr. Kelly. We're going to try to get to all your questions tonight. Please don't be shy. Ask your questions. Put your comments in, and we're going to get to them. All right. So right now, what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to talk a little bit, keep putting in where you're watching from for those of you who are here. I'm going to read a little bit about Mr. Kelly's bio. All right. So you're going to get to know a little bit more about him. He's a Jamaican. So Mr. Tony Kelly is British born. All right. He was raised in Jamaica and he returned to England in 1979, living in Birmingham with his family ever since. All right. He was Michael Teachers College graduate. He taught English and religious education in Kingston high schools. Tony worked in local and central government for 30 years before early retirement as a middle manager of equity, equality, diversity, and inclusion. Among his qualifications, he's a social legal studies master's degree from University of Birmingham. For nearly 8 years, from June 2012, Mr. Tony was a Diabetes UK community champion, devoting his time raising awareness in all communities in Britain and further afield about health and well-being in relation to diabetes, which in his case is a hereditary medical condition. He is proud to have controlled his type 2 diabetes with physical activity and diet since being diagnosed 17 years ago. Has never taken any medication, Mr. Tony Kelly. Has never taken any medication, thus proving it can be done with the right mindset, discipline, and motivation. And that's why he's gonna share with you guys how he does that, right? So he does Pilates, he does yoga, badminton, and Zumba. He may share a little story with you guys about his Zumba. I hope he does. Every week for several years, and has begun to learn how to swim. Some of us Jamaican don't, don't like to. I mean, I'm decent at it, but anyway, let me continue here. Since April 2020, Tony volunteers as a diabetes strategic patient partner for NHS in Birmingham, and he's a diabetes ambassador and advocate. He's in high demand, as you guys might imagine, on radio, television, webinars, interviews, and he generally talks about type 2 diabetes. He runs a lot of free workshops, and I'm just really excited that he's here. He has been featured in health lifestyle videos on the internet, emphasizing his positive approach in managing and controlling diabetes. June 2018, Tony was interviewed live on the BBC TV, BBC 2 TV at Birmingham's Queen Elizabeth Hospital for the 70th anniversary celebration of the National Health Services. In July 2018, Tony delivered diabetes session in Dominica and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine as part of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Trust, raising awareness in particular of preventable sight loss, which he may mention a bit about tonight, from diabetes, which is rampant in Belize, St. Lucia, Jamaica, and Dominica. June 2019, he visited Canada to raise awareness as well on the same topic, diabetes. All right. So he is a patient expert with experiences with 2 universities as a patient and public involvement representative. He was one of 2 public members of the Scientific Advisory Board in the UK Coronavirus Immunology Consortium, and was involved in another COVID-19 research project, which was led by Dr. Ian Maidment. All right. He has been headhunted by 2 other August bodies in recent times to make sure that the patient, community, and Black perspective are at the forefront of change. All right. So he advocates for African American, for Black people. All right. Tony is an equality, diversity, and inclusion champion of the region, National Institute for Health Research, led by Dr. Mo. Now, he has quite a bit of years of experience in community engagement, which is what he's going to talk a bit more about us today. And he has won multiple awards. I'm not going to go over them all, but there's multiple awards here, from the UK to Jamaica to different places. He's gotten several awards that are listed here, and I won't get into too much of those, but he's won multiple awards for the work that he has been doing. So you all, I want y'all to put your hands together, put your hands together in the chat, put a note in the chat to welcome Mr. Tony Kelly. Just excited that he's here. And without further ado, I'm going to bring him onto my screen. So you're going to see a split screen of the 2 of us. I'm going to give him a chance to speak a bit, introduce himself, and then we'll bring the PowerPoint in. Just quickly before I do that, I'm going to throw a few of your notes here on the chat and welcome you. So Jan, welcome from Aurora. I've got New York massive in the house, Valda. Y'all know I'm in New York as well, so I'm always loving the New York folks. I feel like okay, so we're going to talk about that another time, Auntie. Elorine from Detroit, welcome, bless up. All right, so thank you guys. Okay, so there we go. So now you guys are clapping him on. I'm going to bring him on without further ado. There goes my friend, Miss Bridget. Thank you for watching from YouTube. I love it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Mr. Tony Kelly.
Hello, everybody. This is Tony Kelly from Birmingham, England, live and direct. And welcome. Thanks, Deborah, for having me on the show. I normally stay up because we're 5 hours ahead of you, as Deborah rightly pointed out. And I normally stay up to watch this show. Sometimes it's not that it's boring, but sometimes I fall asleep. But
That's
that doesn't mean
okay.
the show is boring. Right, because it's past my bedtime. Us old folks have to go to bed. Anyway, thanks, Deborah, for having me. And I'm going to go straight into the slides. So if you bring up the first slide, please.
Yes, sir. Let's do that.
So I am a diabetes strategic patient partner. That's a voluntary position that I have with the Birmingham and Solihull Clinical Commissioning Group. And those of you who are listening from England in particular, or Britain, I should say, after April next year, clinical commissioning groups will no longer exist in the National Health Service. They'll be called Integrated Care Systems, ICS. So it's a new word we're going to get to. You notice all the whole heap of fresh fruits and vegetables on that slide. So I do this in a voluntary role, and I'm a diabetes ambassador and advocate all across the globe. Next slide, please. I start with a disclaimer, ladies and gentlemen. I am not a healthcare professional. So I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, not a diabetic nurse, or a chiropodist, or any of those things. However, I've lived with this type 2 condition, and in Britain, we don't call it a non-communicable disease or an acute disease. We call it a medical condition here in Britain. I've lived with it for 17 years. Now, let me start by showing you that cheeky little boy in the middle there, in the cardigan or sweater. That's me in England playing jigsaw with the jigsaw. My mother and father sent me back to the land of their birth at an early age while they remained in Britain. And I grew up in a place called Whitehall, St. Thomas in Jamaica, and went to 2 high schools, Morant Bay High School, which some of you surely will know about, and Happy Grove High School, okay? As a child growing up, viewers, I noticed age 8, 9, 10, I had a very nosy, inquiring mind. And as a child growing up, I noticed relatives of mine, no word of a lie, starting from the top, who had strokes, who were blind, who had heart attacks, who had kidney or renal failure, which meant they had to leave the country areas to go into the hospitals in Kingston to go onto the dialysis machine. I also had relatives of mine who had their feet and toes amputated. In Jamaica, would I say chop off. And finally, but by no means least, relatives of mine who died prematurely. In Jamaica, again, we would call it gone too soon. So dying in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I would ask all these relatives as an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old, very inquisitive, nosy little boy, what's the matter with them? All they would tell me is, and this is a Caribbean, African, and Asian thing, we have a touch of sugar. They minimized, trivialized, or downplayed this medical condition by referring to it as a touch of sugar. Ladies and gentlemen, diabetes is more than a touch of sugar. It's a very, very serious condition. But fast forward, I came back to England in 1979. So we've lived back here in Birmingham for the last 42 years with my wife and my daughter. And a few years ago, 9.5 years ago, Diabetes UK, which is a well-known charity here in Britain, asked me to come and speak for the first time, because I've got the gift of the gab, I can chat. Asked me to come and speak in Wolverhampton, which is 9 miles from Birmingham, about how do I manage this condition without any medication whatsoever. So I went, and they came up to me afterwards. I spoke for about 10 minutes, and they said, you need to come over to Macedonia and help us, meaning you can get into communities, you can talk the talk, you can walk the walk, they'll understand you more. So I've been doing this now for nearly 10 years. But what happened was, 17 years ago, my wife noticed the 4 key symptoms called the 4 T's. T for tired, T for toilet, T for thirsty, and T for thinner. Now, this is a man's thing. Most men, and a lot of you have spouses or husbands or fathers or grandfathers, most men do not do doctors. Most men are not in touch with their emotions. Most men are not in touch with their feelings. I will put up my hand and say I was one of those men. Because I was getting up, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, 3 or 4 times during the night, this is back 17.5 years ago, to go to the toilet. My wife kept saying, something's wrong with you, something wrong with you. I was in denial. Like the ostrich, the largest bird on the planet, buries its head in the sand at the first sign of danger. So eventually I could take the nagging no more. And my wife knows it was nagging because she's seen me talk on television, radio. Went with an early morning sample of my urine to my GP. The GP is a general practitioner or doctor. She put the dipstick in and it came out, Mr. Kelly, Tony, you have sugar or glucose, same thing, in your urine. And she actually said, the records show you have not been down to this practice, this medical center, for the last 8 years. And I held my head down in shame. But she said, for final analysis, I'm going to send off a sample of your blood to the lab, and that will determine whether you do have diabetes. It runs in my family. It's hereditary. So it came back as an early Christmas present, this Christmas coming 18 years, that I have the medical condition. It didn't surprise me. Next slide, please. Now I speak about the National Health Service. Over here in Britain, the Second World War was 1939 to 1945. After 1945, when the World War finished, World War II, they started coming to Asia and Africa and the Caribbean to recruit people to come and build Britain. So in 1948, the National Health Service was formed in Britain. And as I said, 2 years ago, it celebrated its 70th anniversary. The person in the middle, National Health Service 1952, my aunt from Bath, St. Thomas, Jamaica, came over to London to train as a nurse. On the left-hand side, my mother, with all those white nurses, she followed in 1953, a year later, from Bath, St. Thomas, Jamaica, to train as a nurse. Followed by another sister in 1956, who also came from Bath, St. Thomas, Jamaica. So when I see newspaper articles and the media and so on airbrush black people out of the National Health Service, I personally take great offense to that. So I make sure, in terms of changing the narrative, I put my relatives, 3 sisters, 1 my mother, 2 my aunt, I make sure to put them in my presentations, because just like how the bus conductors came and the porters came and the cleaners came and the others came, we as black people came to build up Britain back in the 50s. Okay, next slide, please. And it's important to make the younger generation know that. You will hear the words, whether you're in Jamaica or in America or in Britain, hard to reach communities. If you hear it, I am begging you, please challenge it, because I hear it quite a lot over here. And I ask when I go to all these various health conferences and seminars and symposiums, who are these hard to reach communities? Listen to what they're talking about. Africans, Caribbeans, and Asians. Now, my response to that is, are they on Mars? Are they on Jupiter? Are they in the rainforest? Are they in the deep blue sea? Are they on Mount Everest? Or are they in the jungle, which is showing there? No, they are not. So my then take to them is, next slide, please, which then tells you, please do not refer to people as hard to reach. It's insensitive, it's offensive, it's patronizing, and it is racist, okay? If you go and look on internet after you leave here, type in the words hard to reach, you will see about 15 to 18 pages, and it's all referring to black people. And I say, no, historically excluded, you can use that term, historically excluded, historically neglected, historically ignored, marginalized, or underserved are more appropriate than talking about us being hard to reach. If Muhammad can't go to the mountain, then the mountain must go to Muhammad. And if I, since retirement 8-9 years ago, do on average 150 community events per year, what is to stop healthcare professionals from going out there, from behind their laptop, from out of their ivory tower, and going and engage with communities? So go to the rum bar, go to the place where they're playing the dominoes, go to the hairdressers, go to the barbers. And you will notice I say there at the bottom, whereby I'm saying quite clearly, you shouldn't be going to health clinics, medical centers, the hospitals, or the doctors. Those people are already there for a purpose. You have to go to places where you know you will find the African, Caribbean, and Asian people. So I'm about behavioral changes, making the lifestyle changes in terms of diet and physical activity. And also mention, I do a lot of work with sight, which is blind, and hearing impaired, which is deaf people, and white working class people. And I go and find them. I knock on doors and I go and find them. And they ask lots of questions because nobody likes to involve themselves with the sight people, the hearing and disabilities, and so on, as with the African, Caribbean, and Asian people. Okay? So I think outside the box. I think creatively. Next slide, please. That just says community engagement. So people in the wheelchair, etc. That slide just shows the prevalence of diabetes in Birmingham. And I'm going to give you a take on it. Places where diabetes is rampant in this country, Birmingham we're talking now, Aston, Nechells, Lozells, Alum Rock, Saltley. And the reasons for that is they class them as inner city areas. It's not a term I like to use, but it's impoverished or deprived areas. And one of the reasons is every second and fourth and sixth shop is a fast food or takeaway or what I describe as junk food. I am telling you loud and clear, ladies and gentlemen, all of you who don't like to cook, you need to start preparing your own meals and your own food so you know what you're putting in it, okay? And that is one of the reasons for the high prevalence of diabetes in a lot of the inner city areas. The same applies to Brooklyn and Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx, where they have a lot of fast food or what I call junk food takeaways places where people convenience food. We've got to change our habits in that regard. Next slide, please. So these are the places I target very quickly. Churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, gurdwaras. I will just be driving my car and notice a temple across the road, or a gurdwara, or a residential home, or a nursing home, or a hairdresser's, or a barber shop. And I just stop my car, and I always have on my badge, which then says clearly where I am, where I'm from, and I then hand over my cards. I have cards and say, this is who I am. And I target Rotary clubs, land clubs, all those places. I think outside of the box. I don't go to health clinics, surgeries, GP surgeries, doctors, and that there's no place to go. Those are the places I go. Next slide, please. Now, at this point, Deborah is going to play a 2-minute video which clearly explains exactly what diabetes is. So over to Deborah while I catch my breath, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. So yeah, as he just stated, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to have you guys have a look at this video from Mr. Kelly.
There are two main types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. They're different conditions, but they're both serious. There are some other rarer types of diabetes too. What all types of diabetes have in common is that they cause people to have too much glucose in their blood. But we all need some glucose. It's what gives us our energy. We get glucose when our bodies break down the carbohydrates that we eat or drink, and that glucose is released into our blood. We also need a hormone called insulin. It's made by our pancreas, and it's insulin that allows the glucose in our blood to enter our cells and fuel our bodies. If you don't have diabetes, your pancreas senses when glucose has entered your bloodstream and releases the right amount of insulin so the glucose can get into your cells. But if you have diabetes, this system doesn't work. When you've got type 1 diabetes, you can't make any insulin at all. If you've got type 2 diabetes, it's a bit different. The insulin you make either can't work effectively or you can't produce enough of it. In both types of diabetes, because glucose can't get into your cells, it begins to build up in your blood. And too much glucose in your blood causes a lot of different problems. To begin with, it leads to diabetes symptoms like having to wee a lot, being incredibly thirsty, and feeling very tired. You may also lose weight, get infections like thrush, or suffer from slow healing wounds. Over a long period of time, high glucose levels in your blood can seriously damage your heart, your eyes, your feet, and your kidneys. These are known as the complications of diabetes. But with the right treatment and care, people can live a healthy life. And there's much less risk that someone will experience these complications. If you've got diabetes, you can find lots of information and support about living with it using our website and helpline. As well as campaigning for everyone with diabetes to get the right care, Diabetes UK fund research into all types of diabetes, so we can develop new treatments and one day find a cure. You can find out more about type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
Right, thank you. Now, before Deborah goes to the next slide, I'm just going to make you aware, if you want to see that 2-minute video again and show your relatives and your friends and neighbors and work colleagues, it is on the diabetes.org.uk website, Diabetes UK website. What is diabetes? It explains it there. I'm going to recap and just say to you, there's 2 types of diabetes, type 1, and it's only 8% of people have type 1. I'm going to name you 4 people who have type 1. Philip Schofield, who does the voiceover for that, he has type 1. Halle Berry, the well-known Black American actress, has type 1. Sir Stephen Redgrave, who won 5 Olympic gold medals on the trot at the Olympic Games, has type 1. And the 4th person I'll mention is the former Prime Minister of Britain, Theresa May, has type 1. Now, let me explain type 1 in case you didn't get it there. The pancreas, we all have this organ, 6-inch gland called the pancreas, just behind here, behind the navel string, 6 inches. It makes the hormone insulin. In type 1, it suddenly, for no reason known to man, woman, or any healthcare professional, it packs in. It stops working altogether. You can live without an eye, a leg, without your teeth, without your hair on your head like me. You cannot survive without insulin. Insulin regulates the blood glucose going around your body. So with type 1, we have to give thanks to 100 years ago, this month, November, Sir Frederick Banting, in his lab in Canada, along with his French medical student, Charles Best, noticed a meager dog outside, or what we in Jamaica would say, maga dog. They made this concoction, just like how Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. Sir Frederick Banting, 100 years ago this November, made this concoction, artificial insulin, man-made, synthetic, injected it into the dog, and noticed the dog was making a remarkable recovery. That's how insulin was discovered. So everybody with type 1, because their pancreas is packed in, has to inject insulin into their stomach daily, some 2 times, some 3 times a day. Some don't like to do that, so they wear an insulin pump strapped to their body. And it's nothing to do, type 1, with weight, age, ethnicity, how the size you are. But 90% of people have type 2, whereby the pancreas is making insulin, but either not making enough or it's not doing its job properly. So we need to bear that in mind, okay? So move on to the next slide then for me, please. Now, over here in Britain, we're having these lockdowns and then we open again and so on. So some people are not able to go to their doctor's surgery to get their bloods done. Even you in America or Canada or wherever you are in the Bahamas, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, in the Caribbean, you can go to the diabetes website again, the same website, Diabetes UK. Go there, you put in your height. It tells you, put in your weight, you put in your waist, you put in your waist measurement, your height, your ethnicity, whether you're African, Caribbean, white, you put in your gender, and you put in your age. And it can work out for you. 1,369,000 people have done this. It can work out whether you're no risk, NO, or low risk, LOW risk, or medium risk or high risk. And if you're in the medium and high risk and live in Britain, the fact that you put in your postcode, what you in America would call your zip code, it will actually signpost you to go on to one of the national diabetes prevention programs, which is for about 6 months, where you at a steady pace with others are taught how to try and get your whole situation better so you don't develop the condition. Because once you have diabetes, there's no known cure for it. Yes, there are a few people who have managed to go back into remission, but if they go back to eating unhealthily and not doing physical activity, it will return. So those in Britain who need to go and check it out, even those abroad, can go to the Know Your Risk tool and check out where are you on the risk scale, no, low, medium, or high. and start making the lifestyle changes so that you don't get the complications or get the diabetes itself. So eat a healthy, balanced diet, be more active. And for God's sake, if anybody is on this webinar who is a smoker, give up smoking. I ask you, please. It's not good for your health, full stop. Next slide, please. So those are some of the things I do. I print contact cards. I am 30,000 feet up in the air in an airplane and somebody touches me on my shoulder. Excuse me, we see diabetes on your logo here and on the back. Do you work for them? Oh, yes, and here's my card. I'm going on the train from Birmingham to London. I'm in Bullring. I'm going into London or wherever. I'm in Florida, and people stopping me, asking me, do you work for diabetes? And I say, yes, I do. And I give word of mouth. So I'm saying to you loud and clear, and I go to places like the barbershop, as I said, the hairdressers, the supermarkets, where they're playing the domino, where the men are playing the cricket. I go to places outside, and that is why I don't believe in this whole issue of hard to reach. As I said, it's offensive and racist and shouldn't be used at all. You need to challenge it. And I knock on doors at courts, at Gurdwaras, mosques. Asian people, I do that for them as well. Next slide, please. This is going to talk about some misconceptions which are in the African, Caribbean, and Asian community. Let's look at them. This is a classic myth. Diabetes is a mild condition. Everybody has it. It's a touch of sugar. Forget that nonsense. We have to put that one to bed. It's a cultural myth that's around from the year. Oh, my grandmother have sugar. Please, hello? She have diabetes. It's a serious medical condition. It's God's will, and I'm going to get it. It's God's will, or it's the Bible or the Quran say I'm going to get it. We have to dispel and get rid of that myth in Christian communities and in the Muslim communities as well. If one is fasting during Ramadan, during the month of Ramadan, and you test your blood sugar by pricking your finger, you have broken the fast. Absolute rubbish. So we have to try and dispel that myth. In some communities, and I won't cast aspersions on which, but in some communities that I go into, you see the man, he's as skinny as ever, slim as ever, and walking next to him is his duchess or his queen or his princess, and she's 6 times his size. And some communities fatten up their women folk because, I've conquered. I've got my queen, my duchess, my princess here. Big is not beautiful. Less is more. You shouldn't be fattening up your woman based on that to say, to show how important you are. No. It's another myth we have to get rid of. Now, there's this myth about only people who are overweight or obese, mildly obese or morbidly obese who can develop diabetes. People who are, let me put it plain and simple, mager, slim, of an average weight can also develop diabetes, because in those people who are slim or thin or meager, what happens is the pancreas, the fat gets around the pancreas, although they're thin, and then prevents them from the pancreas from making the insulin. So people who are skinny or average can also develop this condition. Now, a lot of people, if you don't learn anything from this, I want you to learn from this one. Some people say to me, Tony, Mr. Kelly, I'm going to cut down on the sugar and the bun and the ice cream and the Christmas cake and the black cake and all these sort of things and the donut. You need to remember every single carbohydrate you eat. Think about your general science days or your biology days, whether it be bread, whether it be rice, whether it be the patties that you love, the tasty patty or the mothers or whichever other patty that's out there, juicy beef, whether it be yam, whether it be all these starchy foods or carbohydrates as we know them as, when they go down here, they break down into your body into glucose or sugar. I cannot but stress that. Rice, bread, you name it, any carbohydrate. This is one that comes up a lot. People say to me, I'm in my 50s, 60s, or 70s, and my eyesight starting to fail. I'm having blurred vision. They can't see the print. They can't see the television screen. They can't make out people properly. It is the diabetes having its wicked way at the back of your eyes, in the blood vessels there, causing you to have blurred vision and to eventually go blind. And there are 4 countries in the Commonwealth where diabetes and blindness from diabetes is rampant. Belize, St. Lucia, Dominica, where I was 3 years ago, and Jamaica, where I intend to be next year. Touch wood if we get the COVID situation under control. Those are 4 countries in the Commonwealth where diabetes, blindness from diabetes, because I go every year. I don't wear glasses, but I go every year. They put the drops in the eyes at the optician, this is, and they take the cameras and take up the photographs and send it off to the lab, and it comes back. It's called diabetic retinopathy screening. It's a big word, but it's diabetes eye screening. And every year it comes back and says, Mr. Kelly, you're good to go. You're good to go. So you need to be mindful of that. If you notice relatives of yours who are squinting or saying their vision is blurred, it is preventable and avoidable if they start changing their lifestyle in terms of eating habits and physical activity. Next slide, please. So I avoid using the word exercise. I've been doing this for 9.5 years all over the world, but it conjures up images. I am asking people to go to the gym. I say instead physical activity. Gardening is physical activity. Fast-paced walking is physical activity. Cleaning the windows is physical activity. Climbing the stairs and all those things that you see there, I do. Every single one of those things there, including I have started to learn to swim. I heard about 18 months ago that Linford Christie, who some of you know from Jamaica but ran for Britain, he won the 100 meters in the Olympics and the European Championships and the World Championships. He learned to swim 18 months ago. And I said to myself, I grew up in Jamaica, surrounded by the Caribbean Sea. My grandmother said, no, I'm not sending you to no river. You're not going on no trip, no sea, because you will drown. I had today my 5th individual swimming lessons. If it's good enough for Linford Christie, it's good enough for Tony Kelly. So this issue of black people can't swim, we need to get rid of that myth and go and learn to swim. It's a very good for. I do aquarobics as well, where I stand in the pool and you're moving to the flow of the water. I go to a Zumba class and I am sometimes the one, and you Jamaicans will understand me, the one dege man in a Zumba class with 27, 28 women. And I say, well, I'm the rose amongst you thorns. But I think back to the suffering I saw of relatives of mine in St. Thomas, Jamaica, which is why I'm deciding, no, I am not going down there with them. I'm going to do all this physical activity to keep myself fit and toned up and so on. I lead by example. It's called pro-social modeling, lead by example. So every year without fail, I have in Britain here, the winter flu vaccination, because with my type 2 diabetes, I would be more prone if I got any flu to succumbing to it. So I have the winter flu jab. And I know there are people on this line who are anti-COVID and hesitant and reluctant. I had both of my COVID-19 vaccinations plus the booster. So did my wife, and my son-in-law and daughter. They've had the first 2 and waiting now to go get their booster. I know it's personal choice, it's personal preference, it's client self-determination, but I felt it was important that I have it. And I had both of them plus the booster, as I say. Plus, I give every 3 months, I donate blood. Every 3 months, I go to the blood clinic in New Street in Birmingham and I donate blood. They need far more African, Caribbean, and Asian people to do that. The same would apply in Jamaica, the same would apply in America. We need to give blood. When I go there, I see a lot of white people giving blood, and I probably might be 1 or 2, and I hold my head in shame. So I do plug this when I'm on these webinars and so on. We need to be there giving blood. As I said, seek out religious places. And when you go, don't ask for the bishop or the priest or so on, or the imam or the vicar. Find out within the church, the Gurdwara, the mosque you go to, who is in charge of health and well-being, and home in on that person and use them. Use simple, plain language. Simple, plain language, I say. When I go to events and the doctors and the consultants and the researchers and so on, healthcare professionals start with their jargon and the medical terms and their acronyms. I say, excuse me, speak the language of the people. Get it to a level so that the community can understand, which is why so many people say, you must be a doctor because you explain it so well, so crystal clear, and so on and so forth. So for instance, they say impaired glucose regulation, which means you're pre-diabetes or borderline. So why don't you say pre-diabetes or borderline more than showing how bright you are using impaired glucose regulation? Next slide, please. Observe body language, and that's very important. I do a lot of these events, and I will hand out some quizzes, and then somebody will shout out, me forget my reading glasses. Or they might be in your doctor's surgery or your clinic or within your practice there, and you're there talking to them as nice as ever, and suddenly you put in front of them a leaflet, and their body language, they start going into defense mode, and their body. You need to observe that and realize there is the possibility that the person is unable to read or write. Even in their 30s, 40s, 50s, white working class people, African Caribbean people, because in Britain, according to the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, the reading age in Britain is 10 years. So there are lots of people out there who cannot read. You need to cultural competence, be able to pick those signs up and say, I'm going to have to engage with this person in another way. Verbal communication sometimes is the better plea. So I talk about cultural competence quite a lot. And this forget my reading glasses, you need to tune into that. Next slide, please. So we mentioned the 4 T's. T for tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner. There are 2 others, slow healing of cuts and wounds. So sore foot or tembe, as would say in Jamaica, or ulcers. You need to be mindful, and the blurred vision. And sometimes you can have this condition for up to 10 years and showing no symptoms whatsoever. Okay? And then by the time you find out, the horse has bolted and it's too late, which is why I'm saying to people, you need to go and get your health checks done yearly at your doctor, your GP, your health clinic, wherever. Black people are 2 to 4 times more likely to have diabetes at an earlier age too, at age 25, as opposed to 40, 15 years later, white people tend to get it. And it's to do with our DNA. Another word for DNA is genetics or metabolism. And also to do with our sedentary couch potato lifestyle, sitting on our proverbial, not doing anything, and so on. So we need to be mindful. Keep moving. I know in Jamaica, they have Jamaica Moves. Move, more movement. Train drivers, tube drivers, lorry drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers, all those professions or careers have a higher rate of diabetes. Why? Because they're sitting on their proverbial, on their backside for most of the day. When they get home, they're tired. They sit in front of the television, fall asleep, and then they go to bed. And I've already mentioned Sir Frederick Banting, 100 years this month, having discovered insulin, which we now use. Next slide, please. That's just showing the gender differences. Next slide, I'll come on to them. Women don't have a problem going and seeing their therapist, their nutritionist, their doctor, their dietitian, or so on. Men are the complete opposite. Men tend to suffer in silence, burying their head in the sand. This pride, this macho thing, I've got to show, not wanting, no showing no emotions, or so on. We've got to get our men folk out of that syndrome of into denial. Because once you get the men through the door, just like me, who for 8 years never went to no medical doctor or so on, there's no stopping me now. Get your men into the various places, because once these things are dealt with at an early stage, then encouragement to speak up, seek help, seek advice, show more empathy and encourage them. That's what I'm about. And we need to be able to do that. Next slide, please. Coming to the end now. You've all heard of the comorbidities, the heart disease, which cause COVID, which are part of COVID, the eye disease, the diabetes, the kidney disease, the hypertension, the blood pressure, and so on. But in red, never lose sight of the following. Systemic structural racism, COVID has proved that beyond a doubt, health and racial disparities, inequalities, and socioeconomic factors. Those play a very important part. And I'm saying to you loud and clear, if your immune system is compromised or is weak, the chances of COVID taking the better of you is much better. So improve your immune system by eating healthily, more fresh fruits and vegetables, cut down on this whole heap of carbohydrates and red meat. Okay, next slide, please. I have something called the sickle cell trait, so I can't do the HbA1c. I do the fructosamine instead, which can only tell me what I've ate in the last 2 weeks. Now, why they say my blood is good for people at the blood clinic? People with the full-blown sickle cell disease or sickle cell anemia, because I only have the trait, if my wife had had the trait, our daughter possibly could have been born with the full-blown sickle cell anemia. More Black people have the sickle cell anemia or the disease, and therefore they need to be mindful when they go to get their bloods. They cannot do the HbA1c, which tells you what you've ate or drank for 3 months. The fructosamine test tells you what I've ate or drank for 2 weeks. 4 years ago, I was feeling very tired, and I went to my surgery. They took a blood test, and they said I have pernicious anemia. Some of you, is the first time you're going to hear this. You know of anemia. This is pernicious anemia, lacking in vitamin B12. And I said, what shall I do? They say, I have to, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, every 3 months for the rest of my life, I have to have a B12 injection. I said, that's not happening. Nobody's going to be joking me in my bottom every 3 months for the rest of my life. I came home. I went to the Pernicious Anemia Society website. I looked up what sort of foods, and you're going to have to do that, what sort of foods I should be eating more of. I also have 2 things. From Holland and Barrett, which is a sort of health store in here, I have Floradix, which increases, it has iron, vitamin B2, vitamin B6, vitamin B12. I have that every day, every morning, and a slow releasing B12 tablet. This is just from a natural store. And my wife prefers Metatone tonic. So in your country, you will not find out what's good. I went back 3 months later and they said, Mr. Kelly, your B12 has shot up in the right range. I said, whether Dickinson, you was going to want to joke me in my bottom. So what I'm saying to you people is you must open your mouth and ask questions. My grandmother used to tell me that as a child. I used to be very shy. And she says, you're a bright little boy, open your mouth and ask questions. I had a kidney stone about 10 years ago because I used to love full fat cream milk. I now only have plant-based milk. So rice milk, almond milk, coconut milk, and oats milk. Those are the milks I have. And of course, I said I'm a blood donor. Next slide, please. Coming to the end, I think. So be patient if you're going down this line of work. Final thoughts to leave with you. Make perseverance your motto. Sometimes people turn me away and say, oh, you're not medically qualified. That's not the issue. It's my experience. You cannot deny a person their lived reality, their lived experience. And that is why I'm saying, if you're able to become a community champion, a community ambassador, try and put yourself in people's shoes. Don't show them sympathy, because sympathy is patronizing. Show empathy, where you put yourself in somebody's shoes, and it's not a one size fits all. What might happen for me might be different for you. You might have to be on medication. Some people have to. Some people don't. So go and get yourself checked out and so on. It's hard, challenging work, but I love doing it. And when I see people say to me, Tony, you know, I'm now off the drug metformin because of you. I've taken up this. I'm eating healthily. Drugs sometimes mask the problem. Listen to that loud and clear. Drugs sometimes mask the problem. And in Britain, we have something now called social prescribing, whereby doctors, surgeries, medical practices, etc., now have to give people a course of gym, a course of Pilates, yoga, dancing out of their health budget, and tell the person to come back and see them in 3 months' time to see how they've gotten. Have they lost any weight? Have they toned up, or so on? You need to look at other alternatives more than just drugs, and more drugs. Because you have one drug, then you have to take another drug to then counteract that. Come on, people, wake up, please. I'm asking you. Coming to 2 more slides. One is showing a cartoon. Next slide, please. For a fair selection, I want everybody to climb that tree. And this is why each individual is different. The only person who is able to climb that tree is the monkey. The bird might be able to fly up, but certainly the penguin and the elephant and the fish and the walrus, they won't be able, or the seal, won't be able to climb that tree. So that's not the best way to go about it. The final slide to leave with you is this one. Change the story, change the narrative. What you see there is equality, where you put everybody on the same level to watch the rounders or the basketball or the football or the hockey or whatever game it is. So the shortest little boy cannot see the game at all. You move from equality to what is called equity, where the tallest young man doesn't need a box. The one in the middle, he can stay on his, but the shortest chap, he has to have 2 boxes in order to see the game better. That's the difference between equity and equality. But I want you to go one stage further. where you are in the Caribbean or in America or Britain, go for liberation, where you move the obstacles, move the fence, move the obstacles, the barriers, the hurdles, and let them view the game just like in the National Health Service or within whatever health arena you are. Move the barriers so you get to engage with more African Caribbean people, white working class people, Asian people more. And that's the end. Thank you very much.
Wow, incredible. Incredible. What a presentation, sir. I am just...
Could you just show them my last slide? So if they want to get in touch with me, Deborah,
of course,
for me to do any, because this is just a short thing. The presentation properly runs for an hour and a half, but we're conscious of time. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, that's my email address. I do webinars in Zambia, in Jamaica, in America, in Canada. Jamaica in particular, and the Caribbean, St. Lucia and St. Kitts, they need to have, when I was in Dominica 3 years ago, I gone 3 different radio stations, the people ring up, can we speak to the doctor from England on the program? I said, which doctor? Oh, that one from England. He seems to know all about this condition. And he puts it so plainly. I said, no. You're tuning in late. My health disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. But this is my lived experience. This is my reality. You can't take that away from me. You can't deny me my lived experience.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly, for coming on, for telling the people them like it is. I love how you present and you also push us to do better.
Yes.
You're not doing it in a soft way. You're really, because of your experience, you're really empowering us to really go forth and do what we really need to do. So I love your approach. Yes. I love all the material you presented. You said a lot of great points. I'm going to share some of the comments. There are a few questions. We have a few minutes. I want to delve into some of the questions that are being asked. So comments and questions, right? So Miss Bridget said that I have been diabetic since 2012. Her grandmother, her mother, both diabetic, and a lot of family members that were diabetic as well. Yes. So sorry to hear that, Bridget. Hopefully you were able to take away some tips from Mr. Kelly that can be used with yourself and your family. Sophia, one of our regulars, she said that she's enjoying this and she'll definitely catch up on the replay as well. One of the things that she mentioned that I thought was really good is that this is a setup by design. So some of these community, and I work in community organizations and we find that these communities, it's sort of set up like that on purpose, because of the same thing you're talking about.
One would go as far as to say to kill off Black people. Real. I keep it very real,
That's true.
We must change our mindset and think, hang on, what are they putting in all that food that I'm going in there to buy? Can I not prepare it at home with my... Listen, when I was growing up in Jamaica, I couldn't cook. They used to say, boy, picnic must not come in the kitchen. It's gal picnic. That's what my grandmother and my grandaunt who raised me said. So I couldn't cook at all. About 14 years ago, my daughter said to me, you're the only man in the house and you can't cook. And you wait on me to come or my wife to come to cook. She gave me a course for a Christmas present of 15 Caribbean cookery lessons.
What?
I haven't looked back. And may I also remind you, some of the best chefs in the world are men. I'm not being sexist, but that is true.
Let me put my hand on my Kimbo, Mr. Tony. What are you talking about? That's true. I mean, listen.
No, but seriously, people need to learn.
You might be right. They had we have what's his name? Who's an honorary Jamaicans.com presenter, who's a world-renowned chef, Chef Noel Cunningham. He's one of the best Jamaican chefs out there, I would say. I don't want to say Jamaican chef. He's one of the best chefs, period. Yeah, man. So, all right. So let's keep going here and see if we can come up on some questions here. Again, Mr. Kelly, lots of great comments about your presentation. People sharing what they're seeing here. So grateful for the webinar. They're just lots of thankful folks. There was a question by a gentleman, Mr. Phil Evans. So what can we take to reduce the fat around the pancreas? And I'll jump in real quick and just to Phil, and then you can jump in as well. We have a couple of minutes. So Phil Evans, my recommendation, you know, as a nutritionist, from a nutritionist perspective, is going to be some of what Mr. Kelly already suggested. When it comes to obesity, that's a driver. Not to say that that's what you're battling, but excess weight that we have on our bodies can play a role in us having a diabetic condition. So reducing your weight, increasing, if you are overweight or obese, reducing your weight would reduce the fat on the pancreas, but also enjoying foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, having a more predominant plant-based diet, but then also physical activity, right? So like he said before, not necessarily lifting weights, but any type of activity that's going to get you up off your bum, as he would put, as he put it the British way, off your bum, right? Moving, exercising in, you know, in whatever way that you like. Moving your body, basically, just make movements. Mr. Kelly, what would you want to add to that? Anything?
There's nothing to be added to that. You've said it all.
All right. And some folks was giving you some amen. We had some amen. We have some very informative, lots of applause and things that you were getting here. Camille says she's in awe. I love it. Sophia, again, one of our regulars, saying great presentation, even though I came. Sophia, you're never late. Never late, my friend. And then, of course, Kerrick Johnson, you guys know that is my husband, tuning in from downstairs. And Mr. Kelly, this is your
email address
information. So I put it in the chat for those of you who are looking to contact him. I want to reiterate that you can.
It's all free. There's no cost. There's no cost involved. It's a case of want it, can't get it, and get it, no want it. Hello.
Listen, I'm just so grateful you came on, because, you know, lots of folks here just saying how impressed they are and how happy they are with the presentation. Of course, Camille, my pleasure. We love to do this work. You know, part of being in this profession of being a diabetes ambassador and being a nutritionist myself, when you're in this type of profession, they call us helping profession. Same thing like nurses and all the others. It's a general feeling to want to help others, right? But yeah, Mr. Kelly, most of this stuff is excellent presentation. Lots of really great notes here, which are going to be there. Very informative. Do you mind sharing the cause of your B12 deficiency? So that's a question for you, Mr. Kelly.
Oh, all right. Well, I was feeling very tired, lethargic, and very jaded, lethargic, tired. And I went, and they said, oh, it's pernicious anemia. That's the actual words, pernicious anemia, lacking in B12. Right. So how you need to go look up. Some dairy products improve your B12. And also, apart from, we're talking dairy products, we're also talking about things like shellfish, lobster, if you can afford it, crab as well, prawns. But also, as I say, if you go to any good, I wouldn't call them drugstore, herbalists, or I don't know what you call them in the States there, but Metatone tonic is what my wife prefers. And the older you get, we make less of the B12. That's a fact. The older you get, so you need to supplement it by either the Floridix or the Metatone tonic, and also if you can get the B12 slow releasing tablets. Go into your herbalist store and ask them what do they have which can help you to supplement your B12 deficiency. Because people with diabetes, if you're low in B12, you're heading for a coma. And this is why they were saying I would have to have the injection every 3 months. Some people do have the injection every 3 months, but no, I'm not prepared to do that. I made what we call the lifestyle changes, the behavioral changes, add certain things to my diet and start doing other things so that I don't have to go down the big pharma route.
I love that. That's excellent. You guys know on this show, we're always trying to push for natural ways, the way that you can do it. That can really take care of your body. And I will co-sign the Floridix for B12. I myself use Floridix because I love that it is liquid. So the Floridix he mentioned, guys, ladies and gentlemen, it's a plant-based, 100% plant-based. They do it for calcium, magnesium. They do it for iron. They do it for B12, as he's showing here on the screen. So one of the things when it comes to B12, majority of the population is deficient in B12, right? B12 comes from the ground. It's one of the things that the animals are eating when they're eating dirt. And so when they're eating the grass and the dirt, the B12 comes up in their system. You're getting it as a secondary form if you're eating cow. If you're not eating cow and you're eating just a plant-based diet, like myself, I have to substitute. I have to actually take supplements.
Yes. I was just about to say every vegetarian or vegan has to supplement with B12. Has to have B12 tablets.
Yeah, and that's something that your doctor can confirm with you. You know, as you know, both of us are not medical doctors, but we have our lived experience and we also have our experience, you know, doing the work. So, but B12 is definitely recommended if you happen to be vegan, vegetarian. And again, majority of the population is deficient in it. Their deficiency in same like magnesium, some of these things, vitamin D, these are some of the main minerals and vitamins that folks are traditionally deficient in, and those are the ones you don't want to be deficient in because they have so much function in the body, right? The B12 has so much function in the body, does so many different things, so you don't want to be deficient in these because they'll throw a lot of stuff off. All right, we're pretty much out of time. I'm going to just run through a couple more things and then we're going to wrap here. So folks just co-signing and loving it. Excellent show, Mr. Kelly. I cannot thank you enough for being on here. So DC Brown from our YouTube is saying excellent diabetes advocacy. Yes, that's definitely what he's preaching. Walking, another form of exercise, guys. You know how it is now. Most places are cold. I say if you can, just get the gear and go outside still, because the fresh air is very important, right? So as much as we're not wanting to be outside, because I myself haven't been working out as much because of the cold weather, but now it's a matter of finding my gear and getting outside and still making sure that we get it done. You understand? As Mr. Kelly has empowered us to do here tonight. I hope that you guys are going to walk away feeling empowered. Mr. Kelly, do you have a Facebook page or YouTube channel? And if you don't,
I do a program. It's called Breakthrough Television. I'm a television presenter. So it's called Break, BREAK, and then True is TRU. You can subscribe to it because I do interview a lot of people, have done over the last 18 months to 2 years, about health and well-being issues within Britain. And all of these are Black professionals, healthcare professionals that I interviewed. So it's Break, BREAK, and then TRU, another word, Breakthrough TV. That's where you can follow me. And it's there for you, you know.
I'm putting it also in the chat, everybody. All right. So
I do have a Facebook page as well, my own Facebook page with over 800 people on it.
So, Kelly, when we finish, I mean, it's late for you there in Britain. When you're tomorrow, if you get a chance, you can come on and respond to some of these comments if you like, and you know, put your information so people can reach out to you. I try to update it as well, but if you want to put your name and any more additional information, so look out for Mr. Kelly maybe by tomorrow or so. He'll have a chance to throw.
You might have to tell me with my technophobia. I'm the world's biggest technophobia. So you'll have to tell me where exactly do I go put the information.
Right under the presentation. But I'll help you for sure.
All right.
Listen up, guys. We are out
nice
of time. Of course, I'm so glad you came on. Mr. Kelly has been, like I said before, has been on the program many times as a guest, like most of you here. He's been coming on and sharing and you know, making his comments and so forth, late night from Britain. And you know, so it was lovely to learn of the work that he's doing. We've been connected since I started on Jamaicans.com, and I told him one of these days. And so one of these days came tonight. So before we go, I'm going to just go over the few things that I was taking notes as I was listening in to you know, because I want to learn as well. There's not everything that I know, not everything that you know, but just some takeaways. And he already gave the takeaways, but these are the things I want you guys to kind of remember. Pretty much everything he said, but I'm going to give you the 5 sort of takeaways that I got for you to focus on. Carbohydrates, guys, turn into sugar. All carbohydrates. The good ones are the plant-based ones. They are slower moving through the system. So I want to highlight that. The good carbohydrates, plant-based carbohydrates, move much slower through the system. That is what you want to have. If you do want to go overboard on carbs, go overboard on the plant-based carbs. Okay, so avoid the rice, white rice. We always talk about the white food, white rice, white flour, and all of that. You want to do plant-based. Number 2, know your risk. And the link was placed here. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for including that in the presentation. You can go and check your risk, right? Find out what level you are at. If you happen to be at risk, you talk about the 4 T's. think about those things and see if you are falling in that category. Number 3,
Mhm.
he said, go to your doctor. Check up
Mhm.
every year, once a year, guys.
Yes.
You know, I've been
Mhm.
saying that here a long time. Go
Mhm.
to a doctor every year, once a year. Drag
Mhm.
your men with you. What
Yes.
I
Mhm.
my medical doctor is the same as my husband's medical doctor, and that helps. So then I make
Mhm.
an appointment for the 2 a week, and we go together. You understand? You have to find ways around the
Yes,
thing.
on it.
That's
Yes.
right. So go to your doctor once a year. And he also mentioned, which we just jumped into number 4, which was personal responsibility, which he's
Mhm.
a good advocate for. He's putting the
Mhm.
responsibility not on your doctor per se, but on you, because you are
Mhm.
responsible for your health.
Yes.
Take control of your health. He's
Mhm.
empowering you to go and ask questions. He mentioned his
Mhm.
own personal story. So ask questions. Don't be afraid of asking questions,
Exactly.
because you'll be able to get tips like he just gave you. Fluoridix is a great solution, right? That's one of the things. Finally, drugs sometimes mask the problem. Use
Mhm.
other alternatives. So
Mhm.
those were my takeaways that I took notes, and I wanted to just kind of read back those to you guys as a reminder from what we talked about here tonight. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, this was so lovely. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Mr. Kelly, once again, such a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you. We are blessed to have you as a Jamaican in our community.
Mhm.
Continue to do the work that you're doing, sir.
Thank you.
You are
Thank you.
needed. And folks, those of you who are out there who may have an organization and you might want Mr. Kelly to come
With
via,
pleasure. With pleasure.
if you want to fly him down, you can do that still. But
Mhm.
right now we're in the virtual world. Within the virtual world. So for the
Right.
one
Mhm.
from virtually, just
Mhm.
reach out. You have his contact. And if you can't seem to find it, just reach out to me. You guys don't know, you can find me on social media or websites or
Mhm.
what have you. But we're going to go ahead and sign off. I'm going to give the last word to you, Mr. Kelly. If there's anything at all that you'd like to share before we jump off, sir, I'm going to give you the last word. All right.
Well, I have here, may I beg on the all, stop drink the holy pop and soda and aerated water, as we call it in Jamaica. You need to drink more water. Water keeps you
Right.
hydrated. And elderly people in particular who become so confused and disorientated, you probably have your parents and your grandparents, they become dehydrated because they're not taking on enough fluids. Drink more water. I beg
Mhm.
you. It might mean you have to go to the loo more, but the kidneys, the function of the kidneys is to flush out the poisons and toxins from your system. Please, I beg you, drink more water. And most water you don't have to pay. You can get it from the tap.
That's
Yeah?
right.
Or
I love
standpipe
it.
in Jamaica.
I love it. Great final words. All right, guys. Una walk good, eat una veggies, and drink una water.
Yes,
I'll
indeed.
see you all soon, guys. I'm gonna
All
post
right.
some
Thanks
updates
for
about
having
what's
me.
been going on, and so we'll be back on very soon. All right. But
All right. Thank you very much for
so,
having me.
of course, my pleasure. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Kelly.